A veteran linebacker who was named team captain 3 straight seasons is still sitting in free agency, and the Raiders need to make that call before someone else does. The quarterback competition just got a real update from inside the OTA practices, and it is more complicated than people expected. A player who fought for this franchise through some of its darkest moments is being valued as a trade asset, and the market has spoken. And a second-round pick who never got a fair shot is walking into 2026 with everything around him finally pointing in the right direction. Raider Nation, if you bleed silver and black, stay right here. The quarterback competition in Las Vegas just got its first real update from inside OTAs, and Kirk Cousins is making a stronger case for himself than a lot of people expected. Raider Nation Radio's Q Myers was at practice and said Cousins has shown very good command of this offense. He knows where everyone is supposed to be, he can move players into the right spots when they line up incorrectly, and he is operating the huddle with the kind of authority that only comes from years of experience at the highest level. Myers made the point directly. There is no reason, based on what he is seeing right now, to throw Fernando Mendoza out there in Week 1. And that is a take worth sitting with for a moment. Because the argument for Cousins starting is not just about Cousins, it is about protecting Mendoza. If the offensive line is still finding its footing, if the receiver room has not established itself yet, and if the scheme is still being installed, putting a rookie quarterback behind center on Week 1 could do more damage to his development than the short-term benefit of getting him reps is worth. Cousins knows Clint Kubiak's offense from their time together in Minnesota. He already has the foundation. That familiarity gives him a genuine head start that Mendoza cannot overcome through talent alone, at least not immediately. But here is where the other side of this argument is just as real. ESPN's Lindsay Theory is not buying that Cousins holds the job all season. She wrote that while the plan was always for Mendoza to learn at the elbow of the veteran, Mendoza is going to expedite that process. Kubiak himself has said ideally he would not want a rookie starting from day one, but the word ideally is doing a lot of work in that sentence. Cousins will be 38 when the season starts. Mendoza is a much better athlete who was the #1 overall pick for a reason. The reality is that no matter how well Cousins performs in OTAs and training camp, this team is not built to compete for a Super Bowl this season. And every week Mendoza spends on the bench learning is a week of development this franchise cannot get back. The quarterback competition in Las Vegas is real, and how Kubiak handles it over the next 3 months will define the direction of this entire rebuild. The most bittersweet storyline of this entire offseason just got a price tag, and it involves Aiden O'Connell, the 4th-round pick from Purdue, who survived every quarterback overhaul this franchise threw at him, and is now the most likely trade candidate on this entire roster before Week 1 arrives. Bleacher Report's Mo Moton ranked 10 NFL backup quarterbacks by estimated trade value, and O'Connell came in at number 6, worth 2 6th-round picks, one in 2027 and one in 2028. That is the market speaking. And for a player who gave everything he had for this franchise through some of its most difficult moments, that number deserves more than a passing mention. Think about what O'Connell actually did here. He was drafted by a regime that got fired mid-season. He took over as the starter, finished the 2023 season throwing for 2,218 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions with a 62% completion rate. He lost the starting job in 2024, won it back, and threw for another 1,612 yards with 8 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. He was never handed ideal circumstances, not once, and he showed up every single time this organization needed him to. Now Fernando Mendoza and Kirk Cousins are here, and the math simply does not work for 3 quarterbacks on a 53-man roster. O'Connell is the odd man out, and everyone inside that building knows it. But here is what makes this interesting beyond just the emotional side. O'Connell apparently looked good at recent OTA practices, which only increases his trade value at a time when other teams are still sorting out their own quarterback depth charts. He has starting experience in multiple offensive systems. He has a nearly 2-to-1 touchdown-to-interception ratio across his career. He is exactly the kind of high-end backup that teams desperately need when injuries hit and they are not willing to start from scratch. John Spytek could turn O'Connell into 2 future draft picks before training camp even opens. 2 6th-rounders is not a headline move, but in a rebuild where every asset matters, it is exactly the kind of quiet, smart transaction that separates front offices that know what they are doing from the ones that do not. We feel this in our chest. Every single one of us who watched O'Connell fight for this team knows he deserved better circumstances than what he was handed. But the rebuild moves forward, and sometimes the hardest part of building something new is saying goodbye to the people who held it together when everything else was falling apart. The Raiders linebacker room needs one more piece, and the right answer is still available. Bobby Okereke, a 29-year-old veteran who was named team captain in each of his 3 seasons with the New York Giants from 2023 to 2025 and is sitting in free agency right now, waiting for a call that Las Vegas should already be making. The Raiders added Nakobe Dean and Quay Walker as the starting inside linebackers this offseason, and that was the right move. Both are genuine upgrades over what this defense had last season. But depth is still a real concern at this position. If either Dean or Walker goes down with an injury, this linebacker room gets thin very quickly. And in a division where you face physical offenses every single week, that is not a risk this defense can afford to carry into a regular season. Okereke fixes that problem in the most direct way possible. Last season with the Giants, he recorded 143 tackles, along with 2 interceptions, a sack, and 6 passes defended. Those are not backup numbers, those are starting caliber production from a player who has been a defensive leader at the NFL level for multiple seasons. He was a captain 3 straight years. He knows how to lead a talented defensive unit, how to communicate assignments, and how to keep younger players around him accountable to the standard the coaching staff is setting. That leadership factor matters enormously for a defense that is still building its identity under Rob Leonard. The Raiders have young pieces developing at linebacker, players who need to see what the standard looks like every single day in practice, not just on game day. Okereke is the kind of veteran presence that raises the floor of an entire position group just by being in the room. He was a 3rd-round pick out of Stanford who has developed into exactly the kind of reliable, experienced linebacker that rebuilding teams desperately need, but rarely find available this late in the offseason. The Raiders have the cap space to make this happen without compromising anything else they are building. This is not a luxury addition. This is the smart, unsexy move that separates a linebacker room that is solid from one that is genuinely ready to handle whatever this season throws at it. John Spytek needs to make this call before someone else does. There is a breakout candidate hiding in plain sight on this roster, and his name is Jack Beck, the 2nd-round pick out of TCU, who finished his rookie season with just 20 receptions for 224 yards, but is walking into 2026 with everything around him finally pointing in the right direction. Last season was not a fair evaluation of what Beck can do. The previous coaching staff did not have a plan for him. He started just 5 games, saw limited targets, and was never put in a position to succeed in a system that was not built for anyone to succeed. But he did flash something in Week 14 against the Denver Broncos. 6 catches for 50 yards against one of the best defenses in the league. That is the kind of performance that tells you the talent is real, even when the circumstances are not. Now, the circumstances are completely different. Clint Kubiak runs an offense that helped Jackson Smith-Njigba win Offensive Player of the Year. A scheme that creates structure, generates separation through design, and puts receivers in positions to win before the ball is even snapped. Beck, at 6'1" and 214 pounds with good speed, elite route running ability, and the physicality to win at the top of his routes, fits exactly what this system is asking for. He is not afraid of contact. He can turn on the speed and take the top off a defense when the coverage calls for it. He has a complete skill set that translates to the modern NFL, and he has never had a coaching staff that knew how to use it until right now. Silver and Black Sports Network's Jesse Merrick watched OTA practice and said it was very clear that this new coaching staff has a specific plan for Beck, understands his skill set, and has already given him an expanded role with Jalen Naylor missing from practice. That is not a small detail. That is a 2nd-round pick finally getting the investment he deserved from day one. Better quarterback play from Kirk Cousins and eventually Fernando Mendoza changes everything for a receiver like Beck, and 2026 could be the season this fan base finally sees what the Raiders saw when they spent a 2nd-round pick on him a year ago. Here is what this moment in the offseason is actually about for the Las Vegas Raiders. The big moves have been made, the foundation is set, and now it comes down to the decisions that do not make headlines, but define seasons. The quarterback competition is real, and how Kubiak handles it over the next 3 months tells Raider Nation everything about what kind of head coach he is going to be. O'Connell deserves to leave this organization with his head held high, and if 2 6th-round picks come back for him, Spytek needs to make that call without hesitation. Okereke is sitting in free agency, and this linebacker room is one injury away from a real problem. That phone call should have already been made. And Beck is walking into training camp with a coaching staff that finally has a plan for him, in a system built for exactly what he does, with better quarterback play around him than he has ever had. That is not a breakout waiting to happen. That is a breakout that has already been set up. The only question is whether Beck goes out and takes it. Training camp opens in weeks. The roster is close but not finished. And the decisions being made right now, the quiet ones, the unsexy ones, the ones that never trend on social media, are the ones that separate teams that compete from teams that fall short in December when it matters most. Raider Nation has waited long enough. This summer is where we find out if this front office is as smart as it looks. Drop your take in the comments. This space belongs to everyone who lives by just win, baby, and never walked away from the silver and black.